The following podcast is a W2M Network original production. Visit W2Mnet.com for all of our other great podcasts, plus news, reviews, articles, and opinions from the worlds of wrestling, video games, football, and entertainment.
Wrestling to the Max Smackdown Review.
What's this? What's going on here? It's a review. Holy crap! Like, where did this come from? All right, who's pulling the strings around here? What's going on? Brandon, what did you do?
What you talking about?
Willis. Good evening, afternoon, whenever you're listening to this, everybody, and welcome as we are live to tape on the W2M Network with the Wrestling to the Max Smackdown live review for September 4th, 2018. Once again, good afternoon, evening, whenever you're listening. I'm your host. My name is Harry Broadhurst. Joining me at this time, the Machine Gun Kelly to my M&M, Brandon Biskobing.
How dare you?
I figured I'd be topical today.
Yeah, good. That's a good one. I'll give you that one.
That being said, when Eminem responds, MGK gonna die.
Oh yeah. Oh, of course.
He done bit off more than he can chew, sucker. To borrow a quote from Big E. Speaking of Big
if only it was still the druggy Eminem.
Sober Eminem's actually not bad after Kamikaze. I mean, it's better than a Revival was.
True.
Although, in fairness, not saying much. Anywho, so how was your vacation, Brandon?
Sick.
Feels like it's been forever since we've done one of these.
Yeah.
Okay, for those of you who don't know, our schedules actually got a little bit crisscrossed due to personal commitments on my half. And then Brandon came down with a throat infection. Well played, sir.
Thanks.
And that kind of took us off of the air for a while as well. But we are back, and we are, I don't know if we're better than ever. Not to mention, I think that's copywritten Mike Greenberg. But we are going to have a whole lot of content for you today, aren't we, Brandon?
Oh, yes. Yes, indeed.
I mean, we got this SmackDown review. There's a 205 Live review that follows. And then, since we're in the business of cheap plugs on this particular podcast, the kickoff, regular season, kicks off tonight. No pun intended.
Yep.
As we have to get all of our predictions and all of our studs and all of our duds. And I still need to work on some buy or sell questions for you schmucks, too.
Yeah,
regardless,
you better get in on that.
Yeah, I'm kind of running out of time. I'm down to about 8 hours until we record that. For the sake of context, it is about 1 o'clock in the afternoon as we're recording this. The kickoff will be recorded tonight, Wednesday, at 10 o'clock in order to have it actually up and on the air before the very first game tomorrow, Thursday, on NBC when the Eagles play the Falcons.
Football season's back.
You know what other season is in town right now, Brandon?
What's that?
Hell in a Cell season.
Oh, yes. Wait, a month early.
No, well, you know, they got to go to Australia, and then there's this evolution is a mystery.
Yes. It's still weird not having Hell in a Cell in October.
And I wish they'd get rid of it as a pay-per-view in general, but that's just me.
I'll agree with that. I wish they would go back to old Attitude Era style of anything can happen on any given pay-per-view.
Not to mention, save the matches for matches that deserve it. Like, Roman and Braun, what logical reason does that have to be in the cell?
I mean, the only reason why it makes any sense for it to be in the cell is because of interference from the Shield and now Drew and Dolph. But that's what doesn't make any sense about the whole Braun thing, is that he locked Roman into the cell so the Shield would be neutralized anyway, so...
And then he went and found himself some backup to neutralize him.
Yeah. Let's not talk about the idiotic writing on Raw.
Let's talk about Road Dogg and SmackDown instead. What do you say we get into the September 4th edition of Tuesday Night SmackDown Live?
Let's do it.
All right, our opening for the show is Daniel Bryan and Brie Bella as they come out to the ring, brought down by Renee Young. Renee, first of all, replays the highlights of last week's episode where Miz and Maurice laid out Daniel and Brie, and then shows a clip of Miz and Maurice in the arena before the show started, calling out Bryan and Brie, but then splitting the building before they knew that Bryan and Brie had arrived. Bryan says that he's not scared and they're ready for a fight right now if Miz and Maurice want some. However, it is announced that Miz and Maurice have already left the building, and instead their challenge is once again answered by Zelina Vega and Andrade Cien Almas. This leads us into a rematch from last week's episode of Tuesday Night SmackDown Live, as our opening contest that we get into coming out of this will be Daniel Bryan and Andrade Cien Almas. Your thoughts on the opening segment here, Brandon?
I mean, it's an interesting way of continuing this whole thing. I mean, this feud seems to have lost a little bit of its luster because of the addition of Maurice and Nick and Brie. But, you know, I mean, this was an interesting episode. It was another one. It was, you know, we've talked about it on the show before. It seems like whatever Raw does, SmackDown does something similar. So this was one of those where it was an episode-long storyline of cat and mouse between the two teams. And, you know, it was okay.
Our opening contest scheduled for one fall.
One fall.
Been a while since I've done that. Is the aforementioned Daniel Bryan and Andrade Cien Almas match. Knee plus later, at 11 minutes and 50 seconds, approximately 8 of which was shown, Daniel Bryan picks up the win over Andrade to the tune of 3.5 stars from Larry. I have it somewhere around there myself. I actually thought this was a pretty good contest to open up the show in terms of in-ring action.
Yeah, this wasn't bad. What?
And the important thing for me to come out of this year, too, is you ready to eat your words yet about Andrade?
This is one of those moments where it's a little different because you don't... The only time that his matches are good, it seems, is when you don't have to worry about shenanigans. You know, last week his match was good prior to the whole interference by Miz. And this match he was good as well. But that's because you didn't have to worry about Zelina doing her BS and, you know, ruining the match.
Yeah, but I think there's something to be said for that old school mentality of using the manager to build heat.
It was different back in the day when, you know, it's one thing with a manager, it's another, like, you know, back in the day, like, I mean, I haven't watched too much of, like, the old NWA, WCW stuff, but correct me if I'm wrong, but, you know, I'm pretty sure a face, you know, after a while got sick and tired of Ric Flair's valets taking cheap shots at them, and they just pushed them aside and, you know, went about their way.
Yeah, but I think we both know in this day and age...
But that's what I'm saying. That's why I'm saying, you know, back then it worked because the faces actually had a chance of retaliating. Whereas now, unless you have a valet of your own, unless you have a female of your own at ringside to be that person to even the odds, you're screwed.
I think sometimes, though, that interference can run astray and they end up screwing themselves. But at the same time, though, I think it's an old school style of thinking in regards to having the managers and stuff at ringside in order to make things more difficult for the baby faces and stuff.
Oh, no, it definitely is. But, I mean, regular managers is one thing.
I personally don't mind it, but that's just me.
I mean, like I said, you know, regular managers, I'm perfectly fine with. The valet stuff in today's WWE just doesn't work because it gives, whereas a manager, yes, it gives the heel a bit of an advantage, the valet in today's WWE just gives them so much of an advantage. It's basically it's basically God modding now.
Post-match, Brie Bella lays out Zelina Vega with one of the stiffest-looking Brie mode knee strikes I think I've ever seen. Seriously, she's just cranking people with that move. She's going to hurt somebody with that thing if she's not careful.
Well, they've never really exactly been the safest and best in the ring.
Well, yeah, I mean, Brie did almost kill herself on Monday night, but that's neither here nor there. Speaking of Monday nights, when's the Raw review coming back? Any luck with that?
TBD.
Fair enough. I know I'm not doing it, so you're kind of on your own there.
Yeah.
Miz and Maurice interrupt the post-match proceedings to announce that they're at a restaurant having dinner. When we come back from a commercial break, Bryan and Brie are leaving the arena to go get some dinner. Yuck, yuck, yuck.
Well, like I said, cat and mouse.
In addition, backstage once again, we have a face-to-face interview segment between Becky Lynch and Charlotte Flair. So, you think the WWE realizes that Becky's the babyface in this whole scenario yet?
No, absolutely not.
Well, they should, because you can clear as day hearing Charlotte getting booed anytime she tries to speak.
Charlotte is not quite to the level of him because, you know, if they had her against just about anyone else, she'd probably be getting cheered. So it's not quite to this level, but Charlotte, especially in this feud, is basically Roman Reigns 2.0.
Well, the thing about it was, to me, is, and the way that I kind of look at it here, is that it's just a case of wrong place, wrong time, because they're trying to feud her against somebody who the WWE turned heel, that the fans did not want them to turn heel because she's so beloved.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Not to mention, when you look at the way that the storyline is played out between Charlotte and Becky, Becky's not entirely wrong in this scenario.
Yeah.
Charlotte,
but, I think the better example would probably be like Batista when he came back, where, you know, they were trying to push him as the face, but no one was buying it because everyone wanted Bryan.
The interview itself, okay, you know what my issue with Charlotte is? Like, I actually thought Becky did really well in this interview. My issue with Charlotte is everything she says just comes off so damn robotic.
Which is surprising because you would think she would have gotten some tips from her father about that.
Regardless, if they make it official, it will be Charlotte and Becky for the women's title at Hell in a Cell. They have to put the belt on Becky there, right?
Common sense thinking would say yes, but this is WWE and they're already announcing... Haven't they already announced a rematch, like either at Super Showdown or Evolution or like at SmackDown 1000 or something?
Well, they may have leaked the match for SmackDown 1000, but I don't think it's actually officially in canon yet.
Well, yeah, but, you know, if it's leaked, then more than likely it's going to happen. Which means that I have a feeling that this is going to end in shenanigans. But we'll see.
Maybe like a double disqualification, and they run it back, and then they can run it back no DQ at SmackDown 1000 or whatever.
Yeah, something like that.
All the same, we move on. The Iconics come down to the ring and make fun of Naomi, as they've been doing the last couple of weeks. It's no more interesting this time than it was the previous two times. That being said, Peyton Royce is beautiful. Speaking of which, our second contest, scheduled for one fall, is the aforementioned Peyton Royce taking on Naomi. And in 1 minute and 25 seconds, Evolution is a mystery. Naomi picks up the win over Peyton Royce, countering a roll-up into a sunset flip for the win. Give Divas a chance to have 1.5-minute matches.
I mean, that's the issue, and I saw a rumor today that they're considering putting a mid-card title in as well, which, like, with how much, unless they are planning on doing more female-only pay-per-views, I don't know how this is going to work because they hardly give the women any time. And, yeah, I don't know.
I mean, the only possible reason...
this whole thing right here was more of a setup for what happened post-match, so that's why the match was so short, I think.
Yeah, post-match after Naomi picks up the win, Billie Kay joins Peyton Royce in a 2-on-1 beatdown on Naomi until Asuka makes the save for Naomi. Wait, what?
Makes sense.
No, it doesn't.
Who else is going to come out to help Naomi? What other faces are there?
Lana? Lana actually has a history with Naomi.
I get that. I was expecting them to do that, honestly, but I prefer... This is one of those moments where I'm more old school, where they, like, while yes, in reality, they are faces, Rusev Day still has not gotten that official turn yet.
Yeah, but Lana's been kind of teasing babyface for a while with her association.
Oh, no, I know that, but that's what I'm saying, like, you know, yes, this could have been the official turn, but at the same time, you know, Asuka already has history with the Iiconics, so, you know, I like this. I'm fine with it.
General indifference, but I'm willing to see where it goes.
This honestly should have happened, like, a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah, well, unfortunately, that would kind of require people to care about Naomi, and I don't think anyone does at the present moment.
Just because she hasn't been used hardly at all for the past, 2 years.
Video package for Jeff Hardy and Randy Orton. There's a pair of them on the show. The first one here is narrated by Jeff. The second one, a little bit later on, is narrated by Randy. Don't get me wrong, I'm interested to see what these two can do. I don't think this is worthy of being inside of the cell.
This is the match I'm looking forward to the most at Hell in a Cell for obvious reasons.
That obvious reason being that Jeff is about to do something stupid?
Yes, precisely.
That checks out. Paige is backstage meeting with Miz and Maurice. Miz says they cut their dinner short because they needed to get back to the arena. That leads Paige announcing that Miz is going to be in action even though Bryan and Brie left looking for them. Miz will face a male superstar of Paige's choice a little bit later on in the show. R-Truth is searching for Carmella as we come backstage after a commercial break and instead finds Maurice calling her Carmella. Maurice disagrees, runs down Carmella in the process. Miz then comes up and runs Truth off as we have a slight flashback back to the Awesome Truth in 2011. But it goes no further at the present moment until a little bit later on in the show. Any comments on either of the two backstage segments with Miz, Maurice, and in this instance, R-Truth?
It was funny. It wasn't really anything crazy. It was nice, especially for those of us who have been watching for that long, them kind of, talking about Awesome Truth and all of that. But, besides that, nothing really huge here.
Samoa Joe comes out for conversation time. There are a lot of promos on this episode.
That seems to be SmackDown's, for all the talk of SmackDown being the wrestling show, they really only get, maybe 4 matches a night.
Yeah, but I think the thing that people notice is that the matches that they do have go longer and are more driven because of the people that are in the matches rather than Monday Night Raw. Like, the workhorses are more or less on SmackDown, is what I'm saying. Yeah. Anyway, Joe talks about the fact that he delivered on his promise to have AJ Styles home on a coveted Tuesday night. That is until AJ Styles' music interrupts Samoa Joe on the... That is until Styles interrupts Joe on the video screen and then proceeds to come down to ringside and whoop that ass. Eventually, the referees get them separated, although one of the referees gets knocked on his ass, courtesy of an AJ Styles dive. Paige comes out with more referees and gets them separated. We officially have our SmackDown title rematch set for Hell in a Cell. Were you surprised to see Jeff and Randy in the cell instead of this match?
I think they both should be in the cell, but there's obviously, scheduling reasons for why this isn't in the cell. This is probably going to have some sort of shenanigan finish again. But, there's a lot of matches that, especially on SmackDown, there are 2 matches that should be in the cell that are not because they're trying to prolong things. And that's one of the problems with having a stipulation pay-per-view is that, matches that deserve the stipulation, they don't want to end it at the current time or, as a result of various reasons, they bypass matches that probably deserve the cell more than like a Roman versus Braun type match. I'm honestly surprised, especially with how they went very, went the kind of Attitude Era route of, the arrest and all of that on Raw, that I was, and I was honestly kind of looking forward to it. It would have been kind of something fun, a little throwback type moment, and, bring that, but at the same time bring in that reality era type thing. I was really expecting this to be some sort of taped segment.
Oh, you mean where, Joe shows up at Styles' house?
Yeah.
I think there's only so far on that line you can walk without crossing it, though, and I feel like they made the right interest in the decision of taste by staying away from the small children involved as well.
Oh no! Well, you wouldn't necessarily need to show them per se. You may show them, originally, but then they could just go off. But also it doesn't really make, this segment kind of didn't make sense because, especially with how Joe is, and especially with how he was, I know NXT doesn't count on the main roster, but especially with how he was in NXT and everything, you would think that Styles, and the fact that Styles knows Joe so well, you would have thought that Styles would have taken the threat seriously and wouldn't have been there, would have been in Atlanta. So, the fact that he's there, it kind of makes everything from last week a moot point.
Truth continues to search for Carmella backstage and eventually finds her, revealing that Maurice called Carmella Staten Island trash. Carmella gets all uppity about this. Ty Dillinger asks Truth what he's doing. Truth's response is that I'm teaching you a lesson, Ty, on how to be in the main event on SmackDown Live. It's very fourth wall of truth there.
Well, go ahead.
Somebody might want to let Truth know it's a work. Go ahead.
This whole segment, and I didn't really even fully realize it until after the show went off the air, during 205 Live when I was seeing the promos for the new MMC, that this was just a very cheap, very bad plug for that.
I'm sure there are certain people that are going to be interested in Mixed Match Challenge Part 2. I know the two of us are not two of those people, but I'm sure there are people that will be interested.
Mm-hmm. But all this whole thing in the main event and everything was to set up Truth and Carmella being together.
Match number 3 on the evening, scheduled for one fall, is a triple threat tag team match where the winners advance. Thank you. Missed that one. Well done. Where the winners advance to face The Bar next week to determine the number 1 contenders to the New Day's tag team titles. In this particular contest, it is Rusev Day of Aiden English and Rusev. By the way, Brandon, do you happen to know what day it is?
Yes, it's Rusev Day. Yes, I know.
It's Rusev Day. And they take on Sanity. And the Usos.
Usos?
If you want to down since, you're more than welcome to. I'm not going to.
Down since day one-ish.
I'm far too Caucasian for such, but if you want to, then by all means, feel free.
So am I, but I'll do it anyway.
Anywho, the match itself goes 12 and a half minutes, approximately 9 and a half of which was shown. And my prediction comes true. Rusev Day picks up the win here as Eric Young eats the pinfall after a Machka kick by Rusev, advancing English and Rusev to the challenge for the number one contendership against the Bar next week. The Bar come out post-match and confront them. Nothing actually comes of it. We just get a little bit of a stare down, and then we go to black from there. Your thoughts on the your thoughts on the tag team title number one contenders triple threat match?
I mean, the match itself was pretty good. I was honestly a little, not really. I was, but wasn't at the same time, surprised at who won. Considering they're facing the Bar, who, especially at this point are pretty solidly heels, I wonder if this will be the moment that they'll finally get that proper official babyface turn, with something happening either, pre-match or post-match or what have you. But, we'll see where this goes. It'll be interesting.
Sorry, my microphone gave me issues there. I'm back. The issue that I have with that, though, is that I think they have to kind of run this a little bit further in order to continue to build it up to the eventual breakup between Rusev and English. So, I expect them to be competitive in the match next week against Cesaro and Sheamus. But after the cracker that we got from Cesaro and Sheamus in the New Day on SmackDown a couple of weeks ago, I see no reason not to reward those four men with the tag team title feud and give the number one contendership to the Bar. Anywho, Miz and Maurice arrive. They come down to ringside, and Miz once again trash talks Bryan and Bella. However, rather than Bryan and Bella coming out here, it is Truth and Carmella with him to set up our main event scheduled for one fall.
One fall.
I can't believe I'm using these words. R-Truth is in a main event match on 2018 as he takes on The Miz. And not only does he take on The Miz in the main event in 2018, he pins The Miz in the main event on SmackDown in 2018 as a body scissors roll-up after a distraction by the arriving Daniel Bryan and Brie Bella leads to a R-Truth technical difficulties, ladies and gentlemen. They happen. My phone's a piece of crap. It happened. Regardless, I don't know if you'll be able to notice the difference in audio quality. I'm having to use the tablet right now because my phone needs to charge, apparently, even though it's plugged into. Anyways, Brandon.
Yes.
Brandon.
Yes.
Dogs are sleeping next to cats. Cows are issuing chocolate milk. The world's gone mad. R-Truth has won a main event match in 2018.
I mean, it's not like he won clean or anything, though.
I'm not sure that I'm comfortable with a world in which R-Truth has a main event victory in 2018. Don't get me wrong. I enjoy Truth's gimmick. I really do. But at the same time, that is not anything that anyone is going to take seriously.
But, I mean, like I said, this is the best example I can make is and this is an even crazier one, is how James Ellsworth was getting wins over AJ Styles because of interference by Dean.
I mean, there's just a whole level of ridiculous here that you kind of have to put aside in order to get to the match itself. The match itself wasn't bad, but it was very bland, and I think that's kind of a traditional Truth complaint just because, well, let's be honest, the guy's on the north side of 40, he's almost 50 here, and he's not able to go as well as he used to.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to sit here and knock Truth for the dedication that he's put into the business, but at the same time, he doesn't have the same get up and go as some of the other people might do in his spot and forward into the main event scene in the WWE. This is a one-time only deal for Truth, obviously, so I'm not going to be too upset about it. But at the same time, I found it weird to see him in a main event slot this in 2018, as I was saying.
Yeah, I mean, this is kind of a means to an end type thing where they were using Truth in that spot as a way to kind of give, it was Bryan distracting Miz, allowing Truth to, especially in Miz's eyes, is definitely inferior to him. A win over Miz, which will just get under Miz's skin.
Well, the post-match as well leads to a beatdown on Miz until the save is made, or attempted to be made, by Andrade Cien Almas and Zelina Vega. Miz and Maurice are able to escape, however, Vega and Almas are not as lucky, and the show goes off the air as Bryan and Brie have Almas and Vega trapped in the Yes Lock, respectively. Miz starts to dart down the ramp to make the save, thinks better of it, throws on the brakes, and Bryan lets go of the hold just in case as we go off of the air for this episode of SmackDown. I will say this much about SmackDown. It does seem like SmackDown makes a regular effort in order to put a different storyline in the main event on a weekly basis, and I do appreciate that.
Well, because they have so many storylines that are hot right now. And they make an effort of having multiple storylines be hot and be in the spotlight more than Raw does.
SmackDown, Brandon, scale of 1 to 10, where do you fall?
I'll say a 7. Some of the things, the whole cat and mouse thing between Miz and Bryan was entertaining to see what happens there, and it went throughout the show. The Becky Charlotte stuff, it's still, it's going to be very interesting to see how they go because, WWE still seems to be hell-bent on making Charlotte the face here. The whole R-Truth stuff was funny. But then, like I mentioned earlier, the Styles Joe stuff, while it was okay with all the things that they were doing last week, what happened this week didn't really make a ton of sense to me. So that was my one kind of down for this week. But besides that, it was a decent episode.
I'm going to fall a little bit closer to a 6 here. I actually enjoyed the show by and large, but I thought that some of the high notes that the show traditionally reaches weren't quite reached, and that effect, it kind of hurts the show on an overall perspective to me. I do enjoy the effort that they're making to try to keep multiple storylines in and out of the main event picture because it keeps things fresh and it keeps you guessing as to what the top storyline on a week-in, week-out basis is going to be. That being said, there is no part of me that buys R-Truth as a legitimate main eventer in 2018. I get the fact that it was supposed to be part of the storyline with Miz or whatever. I get that he was just there as fodder for Bryan. But I still don't see it, and frankly, it hurts the Miz by having him go to such an evenly contested match with Truth in the main event scene, rather than having him look dominant like he should be looking until Truth flukes out a win because of Bryan.
I'll agree with that to an extent, but, Truth is still at least decent in the ring. So, and plus, Miz, while some people may disagree with me, Miz has never been, especially in storyline, has never exactly been the best in-ring guy. He's not exactly a wrestler.
I would agree with that, but at the same time, I don't think Miz needs to be a wrestler to be protected in this instance. I think Miz, the character, is what needs to be protected in this instance, not necessarily Miz, the wrestler.
But Miz, the character, is precisely that, anti-wrestling. He's not the best in-ring guy. He cheats his way to win.
One-word review, Brandon. What do you got?
I'll do one of my abbreviated things. Cat and mouse. It was, that was the main storyline throughout this whole episode, was the whole cat and mouse game between Bryan and Miz, and you even got it in some other storylines as well. You got it in the whole Samoa Joe and AJ Styles thing, even though it didn't make as much sense as another way of doing it could have been. It was very cat and mouse of Joe, thinking that AJ isn't there, so he's, calling him out and everything, and then AJ shows up randomly to go after Joe.
Okay, yeah, I know we call this, I guess technically I could do the one word here by using a hyphenated word. I'm going to go with topsy-turvy.
Mm-hmm.
Because there were some definite highs to this episode of SmackDown, but there were some definite lows as well. And in my opinion, the lows were lower than the highs were high. Like, there's still plenty of good stuff on the Blue brand, and it is consistently on a week-in, week-out basis the most entertaining of the three main shows in the WWE between Raw, SmackDown, and 205 Live, just because of the quality of competitor and the volume of the storytelling on 205 is so much better than the quality of the storytelling on SmackDown is better than what we usually see on 205. That being said, though, I think that this one was a miss, and I believe that SmackDown's had way better episodes in the past.
I'll agree with that.
That's going to officially wrap us up here, Brandon. We got some plugs to get in here. You ready?
Yep.
All right, why don't you go ahead and start the plugs here, and then while you're working on your plugs, I'll get my plugs all put together as well.
Okay. Well, like I mentioned earlier, Raw is kind of up in the air right now. We'll let you know as things progress there. NXT, I'm assuming we'll probably do tomorrow.
NXT will be done tomorrow, yes.
And as will the first night of the Mae Young Classic. We've got the kickoff tonight, and then fantasy football to the max. Still have to talk to Jason about it. May do it tomorrow afternoon or something. But we'll let you know more in depth tonight, probably during kickoff.
Well, one thing's for sure, as far as that goes, you definitely took all of the plugs and didn't leave me any.
Sorry.
Not nice, man. Sometimes I like to plug stuff too. But no. Do I get to plug anything? I don't. Brandon took all the plugs. Seriously, what he said. NXT and the Mae Young Classic coming tomorrow evening, probably, most likely afternoonish, so that way we're done in time to watch the Thursday Night Football game. Speaking of that Thursday Night Football game, the kickoff does return a little bit later on tonight, Wednesday, if you're listening to this in your timeline as it's being posted. And yeah, that's about all I got. For Brandon Biskobing, I'm Harry Broadhurst. This has been the Wrestling to the Max SmackDown Live Review for September 4th, 2018. Thanks for listening, everybody. We'll talk to you guys next week for more SmackDown. 205 Live is up next here on the W2M Network.